All right, this is our first coaching session after a lesson with Stephanie, and we are going to ask some questions and see if I can guide through the proper time. So just a quick reflection time. What are some ideas you have regarding a new strategy or resource you want to implement? What are some things you want to try as you get started a little bit more in the year?
I would like to incorporate more technology into the classroom, as well as having students work more collaboratively with one another.
Oh, very good.
And just being able to really teach students the strategies to work independently, so that
Okay,
they can
very
focus
good.
on small groups.
Focus on small groups. Have you thought more about what the collaboration part looks like?
I'd like to allow them to do like a project of their choosing, as long as it relates to the unit. So,
Okay.
for example, right now our ELA is focusing on the power of the sun, so it's related to science. So
Sure.
having them come up with a topic of their own related to the unit, and then
Excellent.
working together to create something.
Good idea. We're using our Chromebooks for one-to-one stuff, but that collaboration piece coming along, that's a hard piece to do, so that's a great idea. I like how that is, and we'll talk about how do we, because I would like to do the same thing, different unit, but that idea, so we'll keep talking about how those plans work. Another question is, what has gone well this past week? So last week into today, what has gone well for you?
What has gone well?
The
Math,
highs.
just specific to the lesson today, or
Anything.
in general?
Anything in
Okay,
general.
math lessons are going fairly well. I think we're pretty set in a routine for math now.
Good.
Students know exactly what to expect.
Mhm.
We do different activities, but once the activity starts, they know what the next step is, because sometimes we'll watch a video where someone else is actually teaching the lesson,
Sure.
and they know they need to take down the notes. There are students who are in charge of the blue marker, and they need to star the students they're in charge of their work in the book, not checking
Okay.
to see for correctness, but to make sure that they're actually following along with the examples and doing the work.
Okay, good.
Because before, too many students were just staring off into space and
Oh,
not
yeah.
even copying down the examples.
Right.
So now they're being accountable,
Sure.
and their name gets written down if they're not doing it.
Okay.
But I haven't had that happen since
Nice.
I started it.
So you're having
that's
kids
good.
come alongside and helping other kids with just staying on task, and they have questions, they can help each other, but just kind of monitoring, so you're working with your group and so on. So that's good.
And I've also implemented a few students who I know have the concepts down to work with.
Right.
Students who are almost there, but not quite there. So they're working with the students who are almost able to master it.
Well, that's good. We can teach it, but if a student can teach another student, that's a good thing. Good strategy to implement, because that helps you know that they're getting it. They're going to get their work done anyway. So it's good that they're now coming alongside and helping. And that gives them some good feelings too of leadership, which we've been talking about. All right, very good. So during this reading time today, when we were looking at just the strategies you were using and looking at kids, I was specifically looking at how many times you got interrupted. That's a thing that happens to us all a lot, which wasn't very many. And then how many times were students just off task? Because when you're having a small group, it's an easy time for those kids. So I was just wondering, as I kept tally marks just to notice through the two sessions you had. You had one session, and then the timer went off, and then they did it again. So we'll talk about that. But my question to you is you've used this strategy before, where you have a small group and they're doing their reading or their writing, the daily 5 piece. How did it go different today than it's gone in the past? Did you notice any differences?
No, it was taking me a little longer to get through the lesson with my small group, because typically I would like to pull back another small group to focus
Okay.
in on the books that they're reading.
Sure.
But today they got to choose what they read today.
Mhm.
It was a lot quieter today. I don't know if because another teacher was in the room.
Probably.
And then there were a few students who were taking a while to get started, but
Sure.
we're still working on
Right, and that's a very different routine than what they're used to in fourth grade. It's a year older; they can do more. So giving them that freedom to have some choice is good. And I really thought after the fifth or sixth week that it would still kind of be different, but I think they're doing a really good job with it. Now it's you have 6 or 7 kids that go out to another reading group, so you have a smaller group, which is nice. But just that routine that you're setting up for them is a good strategy in itself to help you manage. So they're self-managing in a sense, and I think that's a really good idea. Keep those groups moving. And it was good. It was a short amount of time, and then they had to switch and do something else. And as you go, you can make that longer. But you've got that figured out well. That's a good strategy. It works out really well. Another question I have for you is, what would it look like if you had student-led groups for the individual time in writing and reading? So here's my thinking, and just you think about this. You alluded to it in math. But in those kids that are sitting over there, what if there were some key leaders leading a group and just kind of helping facilitate? What would you think about that, and how would that look to you if you were trying something new? Not tomorrow, but Christmas time or even after Christmas, something to shoot for later. How would you like that? Would you like something like that, and how would that work?
I would, and I think it would work. It wouldn't work similarly to math because for ELA, I'd just look for someone who's more on the responsible side.
Right.
Because it wouldn't really be based off of ability level.
Right.
So I wouldn't expect them to teach the reading or
Right,
the
right.
writing. So I would just look for someone who's responsible that would be able to maybe monitor a group of kids,
Right.
and just make sure that they are on task. If they're not on task, then I actually had Chromebook monitors, and one of the students came up with it on their own. She wrote down the names of all the students she was monitoring, and she actually gave them her own 2 warnings, and she said,
Oh,
if
yes.
you get caught a third time not being on task or being on something you're not supposed to be on, this is me.
Right.
So implementing maybe something like that,
Sure.
strike 3, so that they're not running too many
Every single time. Right. And as we can get kids to step up and lead in some of those areas, it makes your job a little bit easier. And like you said, they're not teaching, but maybe they can reinforce, maybe they can check on, hey, let's look at this one. What if you did it this way? It's something that we all strive for as we get better, is teaching them the material, but also teaching them how to be good leaders. So those are very good. I think what you did with the lessons today, the taking that suffix lesson, breaking it down into those pieces, you were following the curriculum, but with 4 kids in a group, that curriculum can go 10 different ways sometimes, and they followed right through with it. You asked them some good questions. I think everything went really well. The interruptions I counted off-task kids were 22. Your 4 kids here weren't off-task because they were on-task focused, but there's a lot of different things going on over here, and so we want to talk about how can we stop that. And for some, it's just kids looking up, and I was very nitpicky. They stopped typing in, or they stopped writing, and they looked up. Well, that's off task because they're not doing, or they're talking too much with their neighbor. So just different little things that we can look at and say, okay, how can we make this a little bit better? But for 6 weeks of being a teacher, they're fine. They're doing well. And they're old enough that they can kind of self-monitor too. So just little things we'll keep looking at to strategize on, okay, how can we make this even more efficient than it is? But I think everything went really well for that lesson.